you've got a hell of a comeback story, mate.
The job, the wife, and all the assets, money, it all went in a day.
Going from I'm secure to actually now I'm really kicking goals again.
I sort of started again at 30.
Trent, you've had a hell of a journey.
I've really just struggled for the first time in a long time with the direction that we're in, because it feels like everything I've built, the government is trying to take away. They've already come after my super, my tax rate, negative gearing, capital gains. What won't these guys touch?
What you've built is awesome. How much did you get?
It'd be about 5.5.
And this has been built over the course of
6-7 years. My strategy was a 25-year strategy. There's a lot of emotions going through my head right now. What if I lose my job? Like, what's my plan B?
I want to talk about your portfolio because what you've built is awesome. It's at 4 mil, 5 mil. How much did you get?
It'd be about 5.5.
About 5.5 mil. Okay. And this has been built over the course of what, the last how many years?
Well, we bought our PPOR, started with that in 2019. So whatever that, 6-7 years.
6-7 years
Good
ago.
timing.
Good timing, yeah. And, but in terms of the timing, it's also something that this comes back to the comeback story of the being able to actually take action. You were sharing a few stories with me earlier when we were having a coffee about a few lows, but then you don't dwell on the lows for very long. No. And I want to talk about this because I think that there's a lot of people at the moment that they're going to be feeling a bit of pain. There's some changes. You and I don't want to open up the topic of Albo too much, but we're probably on the same page there, I'd say. And there's probably a lot of listeners that feel very similar to us. I want to talk about resilience. I want to talk about your success, but I want you to take me back to 30 years old, getting a phone call from dad, going to Europe. Can you paint this picture for me of your new chapter opening up, but what happened just before to get you there?
I would say I was at 29, well and truly on the way to the life I'd imagined as a young person. And had sort of gone off rails a bit, but I'd kind of made another comeback story. I would say my life has a few different comeback stories, right? And overcoming different challenges. But in this particular case, 29, had just broken down a marriage. We'd been married for all of 5 months. Unfortunately, I'd worked for this my then wife's father, and unfortunately as well with the marriage had gone the job, which is a job that I'd kind of uprooted my whole life and career to move to her father's business to try to, like, I guess, help. And there was a certain amount of arrogance and ego. That was one of the lessons from it.
From you, from them,
from me to leave what I knew I was comfortable and successful at, to go to his company to, I suppose, do the right thing as the son-in-law, as well as sort of try to set myself and my future family up for life in this secure, established company. And I think a lot of that was my ego getting in the way of my common sense, which would have been, hey, you're doing just fine in your current career. But unfortunately, as I said, both the job, the wife, and all the assets, money, etc., all went within, and it's 2 houses and sort of a lot of money in the bank. It all went in a day. And it was a real gut punch the way it happened. It was a real surprise because marriage wasn't perfect. We were only 5 months in, but I'm not the sort of guy that I'm a loyal person. I never would have broken up that marriage if I was given a choice. So it all kind of really caught me off guard. In terms of, resilience, that was, as I said, one in a series of different things that have happened throughout my life that at the time it's very easy to dwell on and feel, really bad. And as you should, these are horrible things. That was a horrible time. But there's very little that can be gained from spending too much time dwelling on what has happened, whether it's good or bad. Instead, I think the key to overcoming adversity is to take one small step forward. So for me, the one small step forward in this case to rebuilding my life, I was, the day it all happened, the job, the marriage, everything, I was sat in a hotel room because I couldn't go to my house. It had been cleaned out.
So you literally walked into like an empty house?
Yeah. Without going into too many specifics, I walked out of the house that was full earlier that day in horror at what I'd seen. And then by the time I came home that night, I'd had time to collect my thoughts. Everything was gone. Bank accounts were empty. And I never in a million years, I'm a trusting person. I never would have thought that had happened. So I went to a hotel room because there was no bed to sleep on. And I just remember looking at the wall, staring at the wall at the edge of the bed thinking, we were just about to start a family and now I've got nothing. What am I going to do? What I did do after a certain amount of time and a few phone calls like to mum and dad and even her mum and dad, like they were my family as far as I was concerned.
And dad was also the boss.
Dad was the boss.
Yeah.
And again, I had a lot of respect for the man and I still do.
Yeah.
But ultimately there was no satisfaction there. Like in terms of, there was nothing that they could do to help me. I called one of my good friends, and this is someone I had known for about 5 years at the time. And it was a very difficult conversation. It might've been the next day to talk to him and sort of say what had happened. He was friends with both of us, and basically say, look, I've got nowhere to go. I just know I can't go home. Can I come and stay with you for a couple of weeks? And that was a very difficult conversation to have for a number of reasons. Again, swallowing the pride being part of that. But to my surprise, he was very receptive to it. He extended kind of, his hand and helped me out through that really hard time. And that small positive step then led to, because again, the job had gone the same day, unfortunately, as part of the package with the father.
So you got no income, you've got nothing in the bank account that's been drained.
Next to nothing.
You've got nowhere to live. So next to so a few $1,000s, something to, gotcha. You're reaching out to a friend to basically say, do you have a spare room?
That's right. And this is a friend who, as far as he used to work for me, I was his boss, successful, had a wife and planning kids and all this sort of stuff. And so to go from that perception to, hey mate, I'm really in a bad place, I could really use some help, was a hard call to have just from a pride perspective, but it was the only call I had. I had no one else up there really to turn to. My family was hours and hours away, and it wasn't a practical solution. So he took me in, and that gave me just the kind of couple of days that I needed to really start thinking, how am I going to put my life back together,
And so you'd already built a portfolio of a couple of properties with your, this was previous, because you said you were married for 5 months. So you were together for longer and you did that together, or you'd sort of built that before and then it kind of all evaporated?
Yeah, I'd bought a place myself kind of not long before I met my ex-wife. And then we'd sort of lived together for a couple of years there and moved together, and then we bought our own home together. But I was sort of the primary breadwinner or whatever. So I suppose for the most part, I was the one sort of like stumping up the deposits. We used the equity from my first house to buy the PPOR. And that's sort of, the sort of position from a household that we were in, but all of that just sort of instantly got liquidated, and not in a good way. There's a real lesson there about getting help buying properties, because that first one that I bought was a real stinker. 2-bedroom in Toowoomba, where I grew up, and it just didn't move. I had it for 5 years. It never made a buck. I would have been like losing money on it every year, and it never actually grew. So when I sold it, there was no money there.
Because you've worked with Arj and his team for building most of the portfolio out from now, yeah?
Yeah, Arj and I, InvestorKit and I as a business started working together around 2022.
So from here, now you're getting back on your feet. It sounds like really the big thing, because something that I always struggle with this is you're applying logic to a highly charged emotional situation. Logically, what you're saying is right. It's like, okay, just take some steps forward.
Yeah.
Actually making yourself do that in something that is so emotionally charged is another story. But from something that you told me before about a story, getting a phone call from your dad, and was this all around the same time, or was this a little bit later on going to Europe?
Probably 3 to 6 months later, about 6 months later.
Okay, so you'd had time to sort of emotionally process, recover a little bit more. Yep. You got a job again? Like how you got back on your feet?
About a month or two later, I got just the crappiest job, flogging holidays at a timeshare, basically. And I'm a sales guy. That's what I still do to this day. But I'd gone from running a sales organization for a national company to sitting on the Mooloolaba Strip, flogging timeshare to people at 3 days a week at $500 a week or something. I think it was 4 days a week for $500, and it was all sort of commission, So just enough to cover food, car, keep the car going, things like that. So again, that was still a positive step though, to go from, nothing basically and being heartbroken and kind of in despair to having some type of money coming in. I'd started to have the courage to go out again and try to meet new people and things like that. And then, I got a phone call from Dad, and I was still pretty low, going back to your question, it's the emotional that makes it hard. I'm an emotional guy, and it's emotion that clouds your thinking. So someone told me once about kind of referring to me, if you're getting emotional, there's a good chance that you're not thinking clearly. And if you can feel that in yourself, then it's a great time to just take a step away any way you possibly can to separate yourself from that emotion. It's like buying a house. Real estate PPORs, they're built off showing people beautiful houses that smell fresh and look white and clean and lovely, you know, because it's the emotion. People are picturing their kids running around that house and kitchen, baking cookies. You know, that's what's selling the house, that emotion, not the dollars and cents. People, they want to get, real estate agents, I think, try to get people out of that dollars and cents mindset. So
Yes.
again, if you can reverse that process and feel the emotion, you can feel the smell or the emotion in the air, get out of there and start thinking practically about the situation that you're in.
You might just be wondering and thinking like, Todd, can you get more to the property? I'm getting there. The reason I really want to drill down on this with Trent is because, like, number one, man, like, thank you for actually opening up on this, because I think there are so many more people, men and women, that have been through what you've been through or going through what you've been through that don't know what to do, that don't know. And it just feels hopeless to actually, like, really get on your feet and go again and actually succeed again. And it's why I want to drill down into a practical side of it, because it all comes back to the property. Because if you don't fix this problem, you're not building portfolio, you're not finding success, you're not doing anything, because you're just going to be stuck in this feeling sorry mode.
Yes.
I got stuck in it for years.
Yeah.
I had an accident, 4 years I couldn't walk properly. That shouldn't have gone on for that long mentally for me though.
Yes.
I wish I found conversations like this. So hence why I promise we will get to property.
Yes.
But it's so important to get the mindset right. Can you talk to me then about this trip that changed everything with your dad and how it really came about to get things in the right order for you?
Yeah, well, to your point, I was still in a pretty dark place. Like, again, to go from a great, like, you know, high six-figure salary running sales organizations to flogging holidays, you know, to people that probably shouldn't be buying timeshare, to be perfectly honest with you.
If anyone is thinking what's timeshare, just don't. Just leave it.
Stay away.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you got more money than you need by a significant amount. Yeah. But anyway, so I'm a pretty thoughtful person. So I thought, gee, how did it come to this? You know, and then the phone rings. It's my father saying that he was going to Italy with his brother. It had been his brother's kind of lifelong dream to go to Italy because he'd learnt the language, but he'd never actually been. And so about a week before the flight, Dad calls me and said, oh, you know, my brother's, he's gotten so sick he can't fly. Now he's fine. He's still alive and kicking. He's crushing it. He's very healthy. But he
Has he been deadly since?
Oh, he's always been deadly.
Okay, good.
Mainly his breath. Okay. He couldn't go. It was some sort of like bowel condition or something, which he recovered from, but it meant he couldn't fly for a few months.
Gotcha.
And so he said, do you want to come? I was like, well, Dad, like, I've got this shitty job and I've got about $5,000 to my name, you know, not including super, which of course you can't touch. So do I really want to spend my last $5,000 when I'm feeling sad going to Europe for the first time? Absolutely, I do. And I did. And I got on that plane a week later. It was a week away.
Wow. So like real sudden.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the anecdote for feeling sorry for yourself or procrastination and whatever we were talking about before is action. I firmly believe any type of action, whether it's calling that friend saying you need help. If I hadn't have done that, who knows what happens next, where I go, what I do. You know, you've got to take that action. But in this case, I took the action because I always had wanted to go to Europe. You know, I was 30 at this time. All my friends had already been there, done that, you know. For me, I'd only been overseas on my honeymoon for the first time 6 months earlier. So I jumped at the chance and I borrowed another $3,000 off Dad. So I had enough money to actually cover, you know, like he got me the plane trip, but I still had to pay for the tour. In any case, I was very lucky on this trip in a number of reasons, not just because Dad called me first instead of my brother, who would have snapped it up too.
Yeah.
But also I met a woman there who, like, you know, again, 6 months, 8 months after my marriage had broken down, I never would have imagined this beautiful American, you know, educated, amazing person would be my future wife. And we met in Italy and again, what I thought would be a holiday fling turned into a long distance texting kind of relationship for a few months. And then out of nowhere, she said, I want to come and visit you. I haven't stopped thinking about you. And I hadn't stopped thinking about her. So yeah, she came over and we realized we love each other. And I went to America a couple of times in the next sort of 6 or 8 months. And then she moved to Australia and 2 kids later, 6 houses later, here we are. And so
end of story. 10 years? Yeah, cut it there.
Not quite even. Well, yeah, no, sorry. 2014, I believe. Let me think now.
Yeah, okay. So we're talking like, what is that, 14 years?
So 12 years 12 or something years, all up.
Okay.
From the first time we met in Italy, end of 2014, to today.
So you're getting back on your feet, but I feel like with your story as well, there's several layers to it, but now you're getting very diligent with savings because you're looking at the future going, okay, the assets that I had, they're gone. I've now got this beautiful wife or fiance, girlfriend, not sure exact girlfriend at the time. It's time to start rebuilding.
Yes.
Talk to me about getting back on your feet on the financial aspect now.
Yeah. And like I looked at a lot of different options. Obviously, when you're like this girl I met's from America. So when they live on the other side of the world, you know, you're exploring all options to be together. And one of those, like I even looked at sort of going and getting a green card and going to America. But it turned out the most practical thing to do was for my now wife to come on one of these working holiday type visa things to Australia, which opens up the potential, if it worked out, for a partner visa and citizenship.
There's a pathway.
There's a pathway there, which felt like an easier pathway for both of us, less risky. What I didn't know is then when my wife, because I'd very much just gotten into this new job with my friend who'd called me out of the blue. So still wasn't earning much money, wasn't saving much money, but I've always been a decent little saver. It's something I learned a long time ago. Being on the dole, you got to be pretty careful with your budget. But what I didn't know is that my wife was going to come to Australia with about 50 grand of credit card debt, US, that she'd racked up doing all these extravagant holidays and things with me because she had unfortunately never learnt the saving skill. And that was another gut punch because I thought, we're going to come here, we're both going to get jobs, we're going to make some money, and then we're going to build our life together. But it turned out to, I've got the person that I want to be with forever. Like I already knew that. I knew that really early.
Yeah.
But I've also now got this enormous, call it 70, 80,000 Australian black hole that I know I've got to fill up before I can do the things that I want to do with her, buy a house, start a family, be a good provider. It's very difficult to do that at that stage without being married, etc. If you've got that kind of debt.
Well, and just a quick financing, obviously talk to your broker about this, but depending on, even if you've got the debt there, but if you've just got the capacity for, call it 70, 80 grand of credit card debt, it's anywhere between, what is it, like a 3 to 5 times multiplier on your borrowing capacity as well.
Yeah.
So that would have just like wiped out borrowing capacity.
I'd never had a credit card. I didn't know that credit cards had a 25 or whatever % interest rate that she'd been copping for like 6 months or whatever.
Yeah,
and half of it was, interest. And so, as I said, it was the way I describe it is like a real weight. And so instantly, straight away, I was like, look, I'm sorry. I didn't want you to have to work. I wanted you to enjoy your time here. But unfortunately, you're going to have to go and get some sort of job or it's just not going to work financially. I'm not making enough money to pay expensive Sydney rent and support you and pay off this debt. So every cent that my wife made because she could only work for 6 months in any one job, that's kind of part of the deal with this visa. Every cent that she made, every single cent, because I'd done a budget, of course. I knew that I could afford it. I just knew I hadn't budgeted on that debt. Every dollar that she made, and she's a very talented individual. People love her. So she quite quickly got a job and was successful selling. Paid off that credit card. It took us about a year, but we got it all paid off. And I chipped in some, of course, as well. The bit that I would have liked to be saving, I just had to smash that debt down. I'd never had bad debt like that. It was quite confronting, honestly. As I said, I remember going for walks around the eastern sort of beaches of Sydney and just feeling like this weight on my shoulders. And I just couldn't not bring it up. I was like, how could you not tell me that? You know, like it was really, I looking back as a much older man, I wish I had have been able to be a bit more flexible in my thinking towards it, because it really did put a dampener on that first kind of 6 months or so, I suppose. Like we were having a great time and a great life. We were never been happier in my life, but it always felt like until this debt's cleared, there's this weight, that I got to get off my shoulders if I want to move forward the way I want to.
Naval Ravikant. I always struggle to say his last name correctly. Apologies, Naval, if you're watching.
Of course.
Yeah. I want to. There's something that he said the other day in a potty, and it was about how suffering is optional. And when you actually look back on a lot of the times that you had, so many times you could have actually gone through it without the suffering, because most of it happens in your mind. I've said this on a few podcasts recently, and it's something that is so, it's just been in the forefront of my mind, because like last year for me, we had a whole bunch of troubles with B and Freddie and everything. And it was really tricky. But if I really look back on it, I think probably a good sort of 50, 60% of that, I could have just handled better if I had have actually just had better control of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's such a freeing thing. And it's why I'm really doubling down on what you're saying here, Trent, because if you could go back, you'd look at it and go, okay, well, we could have paid off that credit card debt either way. Why not enjoy the process?
Exactly. And I suppose that we did, and I did to a certain extent, but what you're saying is a really important lesson in life, that perception, your perception is reality. And again, I can reflect on it saying those are the happiest days of my life, but I remember how I felt at the time. At the time, it was the happiest time of my life, but it was a massive challenge. It was a massive mental challenge to go from, I'm going to get her married within the next year, to I can't even think about getting married for 3 years. You know, we just don't have the money to pay for a wedding, to do this, to do that. So it is all perception. You're 100% right. And it's very much like that resilience piece, you know. It's one of those lessons I've learned, as I said, as I'm a bit older in life, and I've done a lot of work on myself to learn that one, but it's your perception that becomes reality. Things are as good or as bad as you think they are. So as I said, it was at the time the happiest time of my life, and I loved it. And it's a lot easier. It's very easy for me to look back and say that, but I can also remember the pain at the time of how it felt carrying that debt around, because it was just such a shock. The way you perceive things is generally the reality that you experience.
Totally. I'm really interested as to how this then transitioned into property. So you cleared these debts. You've got this wonderful woman. You're getting back on your feet financially with a job that sounds like that's starting to really progress with this new career.
Yes.
So I think this is actually a really interesting point, because I actually think it comes back to risk management as well. Because I know that if you're starting again, investing is already risky. There's risks attached to it. You've then had an experience of essentially losing everything. So there's going to be this different level of risk. I've learned recently that apparently one of the reasons divorce or children of divorce apparently have a better risk tolerance is because as a kid, and obviously probably depends on what age you were, I was 3. So as far as I was concerned, mums and dads lived in different houses. It's just how it was. You are constantly looking for what's the emotional stability of mum? What's the emotional stability of dad? What do I actually do? And you actually learn to scan environments at this subconscious level for problems in this totally different way to what kids that actually grow up in like a fully functioning, I want to say normal house. I feel like I'm going to offend someone, but let's just call it that for what it is.
Yeah.
But it's about using that to your advantage, because it's very easy to be a victim of that. But I feel like I've used that to my advantage. And I think that, and I guess this is actually more of an ask than a statement. Is that something that you feel that you potentially have in that the risk mitigation when it came to back to building the portfolio? There's almost this like, where are all of the things that can go wrong, and then how do I kind of plan for them, plug them up?
This is another thing I learned later in life. We probably read the same book, but I think I'd lived that experience. I feel like it's a blessing and a curse. I call it like hyper awareness. My dad always quotes Charles Manson. He says, total paranoia is total awareness. And that's how it feels sometimes. It feels like I'm always looking for the risk, the hidden, what's the worst case scenario that I can plan for but hope for the best and take action towards the best. So try to insulate against the risk without getting stuck on the risk, without fixating and not moving, not taking action. So it's a sort of a paradox. I'm aware of the importance to take action, but because of everything I saw when my parents broke down, sold all the houses and went on to be like, you know, lower middle class or whatever in terms of like the wealth situation, you know, I'm always trying to insulate against the risk of taking that action as well. And that comes into what we were saying around building the portfolio. So it's 2018. I'd lived in Sydney for a couple of years with my then girlfriend. I knew I wanted to marry her. I told her I wanted to marry her, but it wasn't practical to do the things that we wanted to do until that debt was cleared.
And Sydney market wasn't in a good spot in 2018.
I mean, forget Sydney. Like that was never an option. It was never, it was going to be rent vesting in Sydney or make another couple of $100,000 a year because Sydney has always been cost prohibitive. It's still to this day, our mortgage on our 4-bedroom home in Brisbane costs less on a weekly basis than we were paying in 2016. So 10 years ago for a 1-bedroomer in Sydney. So
it's nuts.
Sydney wasn't an option, but it wasn't an option to do any of the things I want to do until we'd mitigated the risk of that debt constantly growing. So we took that step and we planned to sort of get it paid off and move back to Queensland, essentially, where I'm from. And originally I wanted to go to the sunny coast. I'd spent a lot of time there and I loved it. I still love it. But we settled on Brisbane because from a corporate standpoint, Sunshine Coast, a little better these days. But in 2018, there was, you know.
It's a lot more sort of chill, retiree, like fun holiday.
There was very little industry. They're doing actually a fantastic job turning it around. But back then it just wasn't an option. If I lost my job in tech, there ain't no tech jobs on the sunny coast.
And so where was the first investment property then? So it sounds like you're planting the seed for the PPR in Brizzy.
Yep.
Talk to me about the first investment property.
Yeah, so a lot of saving between those couple of years and going up to Brisbane. We rented for the first year we were there, saved money, bought our PPOR after renting for just over a year in Brisbane. So bought our PPOR just 2019 mid that was. Again, I've always been a property guy because I'd seen the houses that Dad in particular had really strived to kind of like buy with the equity growing up. And so I knew I wanted to buy more investment properties. I'd had them in the past. Our house was doing okay in 2019 in Brizzy. We're kind of like a middle ring suburb. It's, you know, bread and butter goes really quite nicely, but it was going up kind of, I don't know, 4% a year or something. But we'd just eked together enough equity. We were about a year in, and I had started to realize from some of the mistakes I'd made, like the 2-bedroom apartment in Toowoomba that never made money over 7 years or 5 years or whatever it was. I knew I couldn't do that again. Like that was just looking back on that and seeing what other people had achieved in the market in that same period of time. I knew that I needed help. I wasn't as smart as I thought I was. I shouldn't just have listened to Dad. You know, that's another lesson. Don't listen to your dad in terms of property selection.
Well, I guess it depends on who your dad is. Fred, that doesn't apply to you.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, Arjun, your kids too, mate. Listen to your dad. He's a smart guy. But my dad, as much as he'd done well out of property, that was as much luck as anything. So I started to investigate buyers agents, and I actually landed on one that did new builds, which again, very big red cross. If you talk to most buyers agents and investors, they will tell you house and land it can be a trap, and there's very good reasons why they say that. Be very careful. However, this company, a mentor of mine had referred me to, and I'd done a lot of risk mitigation and research. I'd seen the results my friend had had. So I felt quite confident buying this first investment property in 2022, 20% equity. Actually, sorry, I tell a lie. It was 20% equity for the whole deposit. So fully out of our PPOR, we pull out every cent to fund the deposit for this new build house and land in Perth.
So like 105% loan?
Yeah, 105% loan, you know, all the borrowing and all that sort of stuff. We didn't get any tax breaks or anything because I'd already owned homes before. So no first homeowners, stamp duty, nothing. It was fine. But again, the market, you know, we bought in Perth and we signed to buy the place in 2021, somewhere around there. And it was constructed, towards the end of 2022. So even I think we paid $600 for the house and land in 2021-ish. And when it finished getting built in 2022, they'd already sort of said, look, you know, it'll probably val up around 600, 650. You know, that's normal for new builds. They'll often be negative equity or negative value when they finish building.
Did they say that to you before you signed up?
They didn't.
Oh, that's fantastic.
They didn't tell me about the negative bit.
Okay.
But I was lucky that Perth had gone through and still is going through one of probably the biggest boom outside of Brisbane that I've ever lived through or consciously lived through, because what I thought was a pretty ordinary sort of build to rent place, 20 Ks out of the city, valed up at 750 when it was finished.
Amazing.
And we rented it out at I think it was 650 initially, but that thing rents out for like 850 now.
What did you pay again?
Later. 600.
600. Okay.
600 all up. So I was walking and thinking, we'll val this at 600 if we're lucky, and at least it'll be okay from a cash flow perspective, and then I'll just let time do the growth part. But Perth's just been booming for, you know, since before I got in there, and it still is slowing down now. But I now have a new decision on what to do with that property because it's up around $1 million now in 2026.
And so why didn't you continue on then? Because it sounds like the experience, whilst it could have gone the other way, because the market did do a bit of the heavy lifting, and something that was otherwise going to be a pretty subpar asset still turned into an okay asset for you. Why not go again with them?
These guys, I was really impressed with their research, really impressed. Like they had sort of pointed out there's a train station being built, you know, just around the corner. There was all sorts of other investment activity, economic diversity going on around that area. Like there's a big wine region sort of north of Perth that I wasn't aware of, northeast of Perth. So it's actually, there's a bit of a lifestyle factor there too. So they got a lot right. What they got wrong, they're great like taking care of you, this particular company. They would always invite me to different dinners and events and things like that as a client. It was the long-term sort of portfolio planning, which is where I was at. Again, I plan, or I try to plan and mitigate risk in things, but every time I'd sort of speak to them, the communication was fine. It just wasn't forward thinking. It was always, okay, when this one's done, you know, we'll do one more in another couple of years. And even right from the get-go, remember I was thinking about the deposit? I remember challenging them at the start saying, hey, why are we doing one of these things? Like, if you really believe what you're saying, I'll give you 2 fees. Let's do 2 10% deposits. Let's go. Like, I don't want to root around anymore. If we can get 2 houses in a year, let's do that.
Because you're looking at now going, I'm in my 30s now, like time's not as much on my side as in my 20s.
Exactly. And I believed them, and I like, they know what they're doing. Like, that house has killed it, and my friend, I'd seen his results, and I let them talk me out of it. Now that I look back, I realize what they were doing.
What were they doing?
The reality, I think, with new house and lands these days, especially with construction costs just skyrocketing, a lot of times in these like greenfield areas, they actually val down when they get built, because valuers go out to these new houses and there's 1,000 other new houses exactly like yours with no huge vacancy rate, huge rate of investors and first owner occupiers. And essentially the houses just they're not scarce. They're not worth as much as they might otherwise be for an existing property. So I think by talking me into doing a 20% deposit and talking themselves out of an extra fee.
You wouldn't have been negative equity.
Exactly. I had a much larger sort of, and they didn't say, the thing is they didn't say at the time, but to your original question, Todd, they just weren't portfolio planning. They were one house, then another one, then another one. I was thinking, how am I going to retire 25 years from now? And working backwards from that, as opposed to what am I going to do for the next year, what am I going to do for the next 5 years? I was thinking, how can I build a portfolio that's going to be big enough that I can retire to a standard of life that I want to when I'm 55 or 60 instead of 70.
I think this is why I also wanted to really push on this part as well of Trent's story, because whilst that has worked out pretty well for you, right? Really well.
That one did.
Yeah. But this right now, we're talking about potentially valuing up negative equity or potentially valuing up lower than really where it should be. This was going through one of the biggest booms. I actually think COVID was literally the 3rd largest boom in history if you go back to the 1950s. So pretty big boom. Yeah, good timing. But if we're then heading into a time where the market's potentially going to slow down a little bit more as far as the capital growth side of things, rents, I believe, are really going to start increasing. I think we're going to see a real different kind of boom in real estate. But it concerns me that more people are going to be jumping into these. They're just after their tax break and then maybe not getting the full picture until they've committed. Because like you said, you didn't get the full picture of, oh, no, that's all right, Trent. These normally val up actually a little bit lower than where you're thinking. To be able to actually have that without the benefit of the 3rd largest boom in Australian history, that's a bad place to be. And that's the thing that I think I want everyone to just think of, like, because everyone's different. Everyone's position is different. Everyone's goals are different. Everyone's risk appetite is different. But make sure if you're going to go down the house and land package, like, do some real thorough research, because I don't think that it's going to work out quite the same as it has for you there, Trent. And I'm really happy it has, though.
Yeah, me too. And it's facilitated, additional purchases. I've never bought another new house and land. But again, to your point and to the earlier conversation around letting emotion take over, I've been going through a lot of emotions since the budget. And I've really just struggled for the first time in a long time with the direction that we're in, because I can start to see a world where it doesn't work out. Yeah. It's no more 15% growth every year for every property and they're all existing. It's what the hell's going to happen next? What's next? Are they going to come after my PPOR? Like, they've already come after my super, my tax rate, my negative gearing, my capital gains. What won't these guys touch?
I reckon they're going to throw everything at it, and it's just going to be how long until we push back.
And again, like, that emotion, I don't know is the point. In the last month or so, I've spoken to these guys again, because again, it's still my best performing property. If you look at my whole portfolio, it's also the oldest, so that helps. Yep. But it's in a best position as far as cash flow goes. It's pretty much neutral after, 3 or 4 years. Like, that's the dream. If you can get a property neutral after 3 or 4 years existing, you're doing reasonably well, washing its own face or whatever. But again, it was as much emotion, because I'm almost out of borrowing at the moment. So I know I want to rebuild our house. I've got to find a way to pay for it, but I know I want to do that. I want to do that more than I want another investment property, just for our own lifestyle and where we're at with our young kids. But I found myself going back to these guys because, like, I've done the SMSF. We're buying one right now in SMSF because I just think it's too good an opportunity not to take advantage of. But it's too late, by the way, if you're listening to this. It was almost too late for me. Thanks, Albo, or Greens. But look, I suppose there's a lot of emotions going through my head right now. What if I lose my job? Like, if I go and get another $1 million in bad debt and rebuild our own place, and then I lose my job. What's my plan B? So again, all these emotions are taking over, and they're starting to, it geared me towards calling them because again, it's like, hey guys, like this property did really well from a cash flow perspective. It can't hurt me as much as all these other options that I've been looking at in terms of existing properties and different things, So I was thinking, I was thinking tax first, which is the wrong way to think about it. So I'd think again, like don't let the emotion or the tax break do the thinking for you. Go back, step back and think to yourself, is this something you would have done? And in the case of the SMSF, I'd already investigated over a year ago, buying a property in SMSF. At the time, I decided against it for a number of reasons. But at this point, nearly out of borrowing, I want to build a house for us to live in. I want to keep investing. It just made, to me, the risk was worth it to pull the super out and go again. But yeah, guys, house and lands, these guys have been great. The reason I went to Arj and the team at InvestorKit was purely we could not get on the same page from a strategy standpoint. Like my strategy was a 25-year strategy. Theirs was a 24-month strategy.
Right. So it's property by property. Let's see how they can fit together.
And I've told these guys, even the call last, like whenever it was a month ago. And again, I can't say a bad thing about these guys because to their credit, they were the ones who, for this property that I was looking at, the new one now, which I may or may not do in the future, they were the ones who said, hey, you really want to put 20% equity into this one. 20% deposit. You don't want to be doing 10% because it's different to what it was in Perth in 2022. I'm happy to say the market they're looking at is Melbourne. And I think a lot of people are waiting for the mean reversion in Melbourne, but they can't confidently say. So they brought the negative equity risk to my attention. Credit to them. They're wonderful to work with. Credit to them. It's just that from a strategy standpoint, even when I called them last month, I'm like, rightio guys, well, I'm 6 properties deep now. You've lost out on 4. That by all rights should have been yours because I went to market with you first. What does the strategy look like for the next 10 years? And again, it's the same conversation, unfortunately. Let's get Melbourne done. Now's the time. And then we'll get, whatever. We'll look at it sort of then.
So in terms of strategy then, the plan. Talk to me about how then that came together, which then led to some pretty rapid expansion of another 4 in the portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is how I came across InvestorKit. And I'd spoken to a bunch of buyer's agents. Actually, before we bought our PPOR, I'd signed up to a really good national buyer's agent to help me with that. Because again, I'd learnt my lessons even before we went to buy our own home to live in. I knew that more than a home to live in, it was the most important investment outside of my choice in partner that I was ever going to make. And I could not get it wrong again at 30 like I had before. So I used a buyer's agent to buy our PPOR, except we didn't go through the sale with them. Bit of a segue again.
Okay.
Essentially, I found out long way, we'd been working with them for about 2 months. We'd had a bunch of meetings. They'd given me a lot of the strategy stuff in terms of their house selection. And I thought it was really good. Like they'd taught me about things like walkability, land to asset ratio, things like this that I'd never thought about, major roads, things like that. But essentially I found out about this clause because I was looking at 100 houses a week on realestate.com trying to find the perfect one for us for years. And it didn't stop when I started working with a buyer's agent. They had some clause that they told me when they found out, like we turned up at the same house inspection basically for our place there in Middle Ring, Brisbane. And they're like, oh, what are you doing here? We're buying your house. I'm like, yeah, but I can still look at houses. They're like, no, if you buy this house, we're taking our fee. I was like, what? I couldn't believe that I could go and find a house that they didn't introduce me to. I could write a loan, buy a house, and they would say, well, now you owe us our fee. It's there in the contract. So again, to their credit, we just went our separate ways. We said, well, look, keep the whatever, couple of grand sort of intro
Retainer
fee
or whatever, yep.
And I can't, that's not fair. So we went our separate ways, but I'd learnt a lot and we ended up buying that house.
Can I ask, why did you though? Because this is something that I actually find interesting because I appreciate both parts.
Me too.
DIY, do it yourself, get someone else to do it. But to me, if I'm ever getting someone else to do it, it's because I'm so busy. It's like, here's money, go solve my problem. I've never understood that here's money, go solve my problem. By the way, I'm going to race you and I'm going to try and do it as well. Like, why?
How could you not? I can't understand not wanting to do your own due diligence, not wanting to, I get it, but that's spoken like a guy who's got a kid. At this stage, we didn't have kids. I had time. Okay. I just didn't realize how much time I had until I had kids. But I had time and I've always loved property. Like I said, since I was a kid, my dad always talked about property and stuff.
Then why not just do it yourself?
Because myself. Sorry. Like I bought a property that had done nothing for 7 years. I bought another one that did next to nothing for a couple.
So more so like you were looking for almost like a teammate, a guidance, it wasn't just the time aspect. It was I don't want to mess this up.
Yeah. Sense checking, due diligence, strategy, risk mitigation, whatever you want to call it. I didn't go in to not buy through them. I did. They showed me probably 3 or 4 houses in that month or two. And I didn't really love any of them because it didn't tick the emotional angle. So I can see why buyer's agents don't want to do PPORs because there's just too much emotion involved.
That is literally why.
But I can tell you that with my way of thinking, there's some emotion, but there's also, I'm about to spend $700,000 on a house. I cannot get that wrong. Or I'm stuck again, like I was with those last 2 houses, and I can't do all the things for my future kids that I want to do. And my parents could have done if they'd have stayed together. They split when I was 13, by the way.
So in terms of moving forward then with different buyers, it sounds like you've spoken to so many, you've used several, you've then had mixed reviews by the sounds of things with the house and land. It's like it's done well, but there were certain things that weren't quite right, but it wasn't like it was a nightmare.
No.
Like it was a good experience, but there wasn't enough planning like long term. That was the thing that was missing. Then you're going down a PPR route, sort of doing a little bit yourself, a little bit with the buyer's agent, finding out that's actually not how it works. So then going back to doing it yourself, and then you're talking with, I'm summarizing here, then you're finding a BA that you can go, okay, we're talking planning now. And we're actually going, what does the next, 5, 10, 20 years look like?
Yes. And I will say as well, the PPOR buyer's agent that we went our separate ways with, they were also the one who, this is a very useful skill, is to start at the end and think backwards. They're the ones who taught me that lesson. Whereas again, I felt that the other agency that I ended up using for the new house and build was starting at the here and now and building from there. But I think if you start at the end, what do I want my life to look like? What do I want my body to look like? What do I
powerful.
What do I want my budget to look like? And then think backwards on the steps it's going to take to get you there is infinitely more useful than thinking, I've got this big goal. What are the little steps that I need to take now, starting with the first step? Does that make sense?
Did you say, what do I want my body to look like?
Yeah, honestly.
Were they a buyer's agent or like?
Yeah, I'm still working on that
one. It's a real full service.
No. But they did teach me, along with some really good fundamental property stuff in those meetings, to start at the end and work backwards, which was a powerful lesson, amongst other things. Like going with your gut was the lesson I learned from my divorce, my only and divorce.
And what is the goal?
The goal for me is retiring when I'm still mobile. I'm 42 now and I already feel like I'm half broken. I work really hard. I try to stay healthy. I exercise as much as I can, but just, it's the pressures of life and age and everything. It catches up with everyone. So the goal for me is 55. 50 is the moonshot. So 8 years is the moonshot, where if I liquidate everything, we can be on around a couple of hundred a year as like a residual income from either a commercial property, shares. I don't think it's going to be a residential portfolio. I don't think in 8 years that's possible. Well, maybe it is. But in any case, I can't see it happening with our family situation. But that's the goal. The realistic goal, I think, is 60. By the time I'm 60, my youngest will be 22. So probably a decent chance we'll be out of the house. Hopefully I'm still somewhat fit and healthy at 60. I had back surgery last year. It was one of the things, again, that it really puts into perspective what's important.
When your back's out, everything's out.
When your health is out, nothing else matters.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, again, moonshot 50, realistic 60. I'd be delighted if I'm out of work at 55. If I'm saying goodbye and the kids are still in the home and I can still, enjoy that last year or two or whatever, and then go off and hopefully have 10 more good years with my wife traveling and doing things. That is the life I want, and lots of golf.
Just 10 years? You're getting rid of her after that, or?
No, she's 5 years younger than me, so I'm assuming I die at this point. And
all right, sorry, I didn't keep it light there. All right, so talk to me about the runway, the plan, when you're sitting down, because now you've acquired the 4. You're sitting down, you're at number 1, you've just got the one that's been built, and you're looking at it going, cool, how do all of these dots connect? Because this is something that I think that so many people really need to understand with more clarity. So being able to open up how you got that clarity to go, I can see this.
Yes.
I think that's going to be really helpful.
Yeah, and I started it before. I don't think I finished. This is where Arj came into my life in a way. I'd always, again, because keenly interested, always listen to podcasts. I don't think I was onto yours by then. Maybe I was, but I'd certainly started to listen to I think the Property Nerds. And at the time he was doing it with his wife.
Yep.
And Lee.
Yep.
And he didn't have any kids either. And he bought this idea of different market cycles. So he talks about second wind markets or early adopter markets, which is how you might frame Melbourne now. It's currently in the negative, but there's a lot of potential for big upswings. But you might take a haircut for a year or two, waiting for the bounce back.
You're not buying into an instant boom.
And then there's what we've probably focused on, like growth markets. So a lot of our portfolio building over the last 5 years has focused on high growth markets to unlock equity to get the next one. And so where our strategy is changing, but I heard this system of markets for the first time ever. I'd heard property clocks and Hare and Todd White and all this stuff. It never made sense to me that there's some 7-year property cycle and every property in Australia is going to double every 7 years. Bullshit. I'd owned a property that did nothing in 7 years. However, looking at the economic factors and factoring into this market cycle strategy that he had, not an entire market, but local markets, second winds, etc., that just resonated with me so much. It's probably one of the first podcasts of his I'd ever listened to, that I started to think, look, this house has done good, like really well in Perth, but I'm just not sure these guys are thinking the same way I'm thinking about strategy and portfolio, no matter how many times I'd sort of asked them.
And long term.
But that market strategy is a long-term strategy. You know, if you're in an early adopter market, it might suck for a year or two. Like we bought one in Melbourne in this year, start of this year. And, you know, it's, who knows? I don't know. It might suck for another 5 years, the way that bloody economy is going down there. But I do really believe that the full range of factors tells me that property will do really well in the fullness of time. But right now it sucks. Or it doesn't suck. It's just, it's not one of these growth ones. It's an early adopter. It's not one that's going to boom out 15, 20% for the next couple of years.
And that's the funny thing about it though. Like you go back to Brisbane in 2019 and you would have been holding that property for 2 years until something really happened. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, like,
I mean, to the point as well, like then it stopped happening. A lot of people forget Brisbane went down like 5-10% in 2022, 3, something like that.
Yeah, 23.
And it's been booming ever since still. Like, you know, it's slowing down again now with, you know, the things that are happening. But it's just really important to think about long term. Like I like active investing and aggressive investing, but it's very important, I think, to think from the end and think long term. And that is my long term. It is being able to enjoy my health and hopefully another 10 to 20 good years, you know, with what I've worked my ass off for, which is the bit no one talks about.
So how important is it then for you, because you've outsourced so much of this, or pretty much all of it by the sounds of things, how important is it for you to actually understand what's going on, opposed to like just the blind faith of, no, cool, you know what you're doing, you got the runs on the board, you've got like, I feel comfortable with you, like all of the boxes are ticked.
Yeah.
Why not just go, okay, you go do that. Like I don't go and study medicine before I like sit down with a doctor. I find a doctor that I'm like, cool, I got that trust in you, and you just kind of do it. But it sounds like you're still listening to potties, you're still educating yourself.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, I'm so invested and leveraged now, I'd think it'd be almost irresponsible not to. You know, I said, I don't know if we've talked about this yet, but we're carrying like $4 or $5 million worth of debt on like a $5 or $6 million portfolio, you know, depending on valuations and stuff. Like I got 2 young kids. That is way too much risk for me to go and do something irresponsible, like just blindly trusting someone to buy a property in a market that I don't understand. Now, leveraging it all, you know, I've got buffers and things in place to make sure that if things do go wrong, I'm covered more or less. It's the same reason I have life insurance, but you know, you never know what's going to happen, I suppose, is my point there. And you need to do your research. You need to take a responsibility for yourself. It's like going and seeing a doctor. You know, like there's a thing called a second opinion. And second opinions save lives because doctors get shit wrong too.
They're still just people. And I guess this is coming back to, it's kind of like that saying of, even if you find people that really care about you, no one's ever going to have your best interest as much as you. Because like also, even if you're dealing with the world's best financial advisor, buyer's agent, property manager, whatever, they've still got other people they need to think about. Whereas you've got you, at the bit of that as well, of course, but you've got you to think about. You obviously got a family, kids, the rest of that, but it is different. And being able to actually have DD put in front of you, I think I'm getting what you're saying here. So it's like you want to be able to have that put in front of you and go, okay, I get why this is good or bad. Yeah.
I have to understand it.
Yeah.
I have to. And again, every buyer's agency, I've ever used has done a really good job, I would say, with their due diligence. Like that'd be the That'd be the biggest red flag for me. If someone, instantly put a property in front of me and they couldn't quantify in a way that I could understand why this thing's going to grow or achieve whatever outcome I'm looking for, cash flow growth, whatever, I'd be really concerned. You've got to be able to explain these things to people.
And there's a few reasons why I wanted to make this up with you. One of them, challenges, adversity, overcoming, back on your feet. The other is, I actually don't talk to many people that have really just used BAs to build their portfolio, which is kind of funny because we have tons of BAs on the podcast.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a really interesting way to actually look at, like, how'd you choose them? What'd you do? What did you still need to do? What did they do? What were the good things? What were the bad things? Because you've got a great outcome. Whilst you're highly leveraged at the moment, you've got a plan, and you were talking about a few other cash flow plays as well that you're now looking into as well to boost cash flow. Yep. But you've got a plan that this is going to be a moment in time, not a forever. And it sounds like it's that plan is really one of the big things that you put comfort and confidence in.
Yeah, that is very true, definitely. And I mean, I can talk about the things that I feel that buyers agents have done well and not done so well, that the ones that I've talked to. But yeah, certainly with InvestorKit, there's a few things they did really, really well. One of the big ones for me was they let me, and again, my idea. Number one, they were smart enough to actually have all of their results over a period of time. Like they actually, and I'd asked the first sort of buyer's agent, like, can you just show me how you've performed against the market with these house and lands over the last X amount of years? Like, oh no, we don't have that. I was like, are you crazy? Like, how do you not have that most fundamental piece of data? Surely you can track the house build cost versus current valuations for every client you've got. They do it now, but they didn't then. And that is something that InvestorKit did. And it's not something they did as part of their sales pitch or anything. It's something I had to ask for. I said, how have you performed against the market? He's like, oh God, I think I've, ended up the sort of the guy that pre-qualified me, ended up sending me like this little like sort of snippet after our phone call because he didn't have the data on hand. And it was very compelling. But it was also very compelling that they let me go and talk to one of their existing clients. I wouldn't have bought through them if they didn't. I bought through the guys I went through first for the house and land because the guy who was kind of like a really figurative kind of, I use the term mentor, but it's not an actual mentor. He's just someone that changed my whole life through his generosity and positivity.
Sounds like a pretty big thing though. It's like, not really a mentor, but he changed my entire life.
Well, he wouldn't like that term. I think people hear mentor and protege and they think it's this like wanky business thing. But he's just someone I aspire to be more like, and has got his attitude changed my life and my career trajectory and my life trajectory. So that's why I refer to him as a mentor. He's like an unconscious mentor. Okay. But we're still good friends, and I'd seen him get the results as my point. So I needed to talk to someone. It's like if I ever go for a job interview, they need someone in that seat. They will tell you what they got to do to get you in that seat. I would recommend anyone, if you can, to go and talk to someone who's been in that seat or who is in that seat right now and ask them if it marries up with what you're hearing on the way in. So that was why they were good enough, InvestorKit, to let me talk to an existing client or two. And it didn't marry up perfectly to what the sales guy had said, but it was very close and it was much more aligned to what I wanted. And that was kind of those two things, the data plus the anecdotal experience of a sort of a referenceable client or two. That was something no one else had done, and it was something that gave me the confidence to switch from new builds to existing property because the new builds guys, when they got wind of it, look at the difference, stamp duty, you're saving on this, you're saving on that, depreciation, this, rah, rah, rah. And it's a very, very compelling argument.
You have to pay depreciation back when you sell though as well. That's always left out of the conversation.
Gee, that's scary. No, it was a very compelling argument. And again, like emotion and certainly even some parts of logic are telling you, tax benefit, rah, rah, nice new house, must have it. But when you look at the full picture over the fullness of time, new versus existing, I think there's a slightly stronger argument maybe for existing properties, although that's all changed now thanks to the budget.
So Trent, you've had a hell of a journey over the past 12, 14 years, lost everything, rebuilt it back up. You've got a wonderful portfolio now. You're still building on that. You're not taking the government changes lightly. There's things that you're still pushing through for now. You've got wife, kids, everything. Like it's sounding like it's really coming up Millhouse. But it hasn't done that by chance. It hasn't done that by fluke. It's done that because you've pushed through. Like you would have had so many times where if you had have stopped, not only would it have been like, okay, yeah, I get it. People probably would have been like, yeah, man, I get it, Trent.
Yeah.
No, you've been through too much. It's okay. It's okay. And whilst it's always well-intentioned to hear that kind of stuff from friends and family, it doesn't actually help. And it's why I wanted to ask you what your action step is for anyone that's really, really resonated with this, going, maybe I actually do want a BA to do this for me. I've had a crappy experience. I've been through a divorce. I've lost it. Like whatever part that you're connecting with. I want to know what's the action step for that person listening right now.
I mean, I don't know for that person what their specific action is, but I know what it's not, and it's not inaction. I think even on this podcast, you sometimes talk about imperfect action outperforming perfect inaction. And I really think that is the key. Now, this market, to me, if I had more money, I'd be buying more because everyone's scared. And whether you want to quote Warren Buffett or any of the guys, they all say, you know, that when everyone's scared is probably a good time to buy. So I think everything is telling you now, right now, oil, Strait of Hormuz, inflation, government changes, blah, 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 tax, don't do anything. Everyone is stopping right now. So to me, that is a really easy way to not do anything. But I think taking some kind of action, be it small, be it large, personally, I'm quite bullish on the market over the next 5 to 10 years in Australia. And that's everything from cash flow, rents, you know, what happens with government, growth, all of it. So I would suggest that just remember, you know, always to, I think the way to lose is to do nothing. Sometimes it's the way to win too, which is a bit of a paradox, but it really is taking some kind of action and accountability for yourself. Like we talked about going and seeing a doctor, you know, like that's an action. You could not see the doctor about that pain in the stomach and you might die 6 months later because it was something, or, you know, your gut might tell you that you shouldn't be marrying this woman. And you might have that conversation with her 3 months before you get married. Hey, honey, I know we're in deep here, all the deposits are paid, but we fight every day. We shouldn't be getting married. What are we doing? Let's take a year. You've taken the action to have that conversation. And the next action that you took was to get married and to ignore what your gut was telling you. So it's one thing to have a gut feeling and to kind of like listen and take some action, but you've got to follow through on it. So again, I've probably not made this point as well as I would like, but you've got to take some sort of action. If before, when I had that conversation with my ex-wife, I had have taken the action of actually delaying that wedding by a year instead of going and getting married 3 months later, I imagine the similar outcome would have happened. We would have gone our separate ways one way or another in that period of time. But again, the moral of the story here is I listened to my gut enough to do a little bit. I didn't follow through with it and take the action to actually call off that wedding. And it's the same with buying houses, you know, like do your due diligence, do your research. I'm big on that. No one is coming to save you except yourself. So you've got to look at your own numbers. But at the same time, don't get lost in your own head. Don't get lost in worry and doubt and negativity. If you've got the means, you just got to have the courage to take that step, whatever it is.
I was actually trying to wrap this up, but you've just made me think of something that I'm interested if this actually resonates with you, because I feel like it very much touches on what you're saying here. And it's something that I've actually recently discovered about myself. There's a whole book on that laptop. 80% done, wrote it 3 years ago. Actually, Arj's in it. A whole bunch of people are in it. No one's ever read it, never seen the light of day. It took me way too long. I had the idea. I got super excited, pitched it to a publisher, blah, 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 all this stuff. And I worked on it for years.
Yeah.
Now it just sits there, cough, spluttered and died. I realized something about myself, that when you get an idea or when something feels right, go do it now. Don't delay, don't overthink, just like do it, but it has to feel right. Equally in the opposite direction, when something just doesn't feel right, when something feels wrong, stop, pause, move away. Because, and if you're kind of going, well, I don't know really what it feels like. What does that wrong feeling feel like? Jump out of a plane. You will feel that feeling. We're not supposed to jump out of planes. It's a wonderful thing to do. I actually love it. But you will really understand what that gut feeling of feels like. But if you can actually start to listen to this of when it's right, go. Take action. But equally, it's like you're saying, it's like sometimes the thing, I don't think it's paradoxical. I think it is about when it feels right, chase it. When it feels wrong, stop, back off. I'm 40 now, just turned 40 recently. I wish I like realized this earlier, because now when I get ideas, just I go into it, and I've now been so much more productive. But I've also had ideas where I'm like, nah, stop that. Where I would have kind of backed and forth for a while and should I, shouldn't I, what should I do? I don't know how that resonates with you, if it does.
No, it absolutely does. I mean, I don't want to keep talking about this silly divorce. It was over 10 years ago, but the whole lesson it taught me in that conversation, these are all the things that happened. You've got to listen to your gut. Most people, especially kids, like kids, dogs, whatever, you see it at a young age. People, that your gut is your best friend. And you lose, a lot of people, myself included, you lose this ability to really tune in and listen to it. Just going through the systems of school and uni and getting in a workforce and politics and what works with people and what doesn't. But your gut always knows, but you've got to have the courage to follow it. And I suppose that is my sort of like takeaway from that particularly hard time in life, is that my gut was telling me something was wrong and I should have been, pumping the brakes. And I tried to, but I didn't try hard enough. So yes, I know what you mean. I would say to you, good luck with the book. I would give it a red hot go, but that's a big lesson, is taking that action and taking a responsibility for yourself, not waiting for like the government to make it simpler for you or, to come into some inheritance or something, go and take that action. If you've got the confidence, have the confidence to do it, but also of course, just plan for the negative, plan for the worst case scenario, but don't let the worst case stop you. The chance of something going wrong, stop you taking the action that could make everything right. Otherwise, you'd never meet that beautiful wife or whatever that you want. If you were too scared to go and say hi to her because she might say no, then you'll never have a chance. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think from an investing standpoint, have the courage, go confidently, make a decision based off data and go confidently in that direction.
Arguably the most important question of the entire show, Trent.
Been thinking long and hard about this one.
What is your favorite pizza?
One of everything. No, I'm a real sucker for a Super Supreme extra cheese. I like them American style.
Oh yeah,
plenty of toppings.
Have you had Detroit?
I have. I've had it every style you can have.
Yeah. Have you had I've never actually had a proper New York slice. You've been over there and had one of them?
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to go to New York a few times, and it's everything you've heard.
I'm going to slightly change the question then. What is your favorite American style pizza?
Yeah, I think a classic New York, I'm trying to think of the name of the place, on Bleecker Street, just a pepperoni pizza.
Yeah.
Perfect base, crispy. Simple, and just fantastic. Fantastic. So a pepperoni, thin base, crispy, cooked on the streets of Manhattan, delish.
Yeah, I can't wait to go there and try it myself.
Do it, mate. Take your book. Go on a book tour.
Yeah. Man, you've got ups, downs, sideways, everything in your story. But the biggest thing that jumps out and that I hope everyone else really takes is never give up. Keep taking action. Keep moving forward. Even if it's just a little move forward, take it.
Yeah.
When dad calls and says, do you want to go to Europe? By the way, you might meet the girl of your dreams. Jump on the plane.
Even if you feel it's hopeless, it's not. There's always hope. If you start believing it's hopeless, that can happen.
That is the perfect way to end it. Trent, thank you so much for jumping on the show.
Thanks for the time, Todd. It's been great.